So right off the bat here, just looking at this, and this is one of the things that really attracted me to this, was just kind of the unique design of this device. I was considering getting the Corda, but this being the second iteration of this and just the way it looks, this handheld thing. And if you told me that this was a synthesizer slash MIDI controller slash step sequencer, in some way slash sampler, that's not the first thing that comes to mind when looking at this design. Everything that I saw, all the videos that I saw, made me think that these were separate buttons on here, something that you could physically press, to include this middle button right here. But this is all a singular unit, and these are just creases on that unit that are kind of carved into that unit, but it's just a singular plate with carves in it. I think what's really important, that phono jack, having that analog option in here, because for all intents and purposes, similar to the SP4 Mark II, I look at the Orba 2 as an instrument. This is something that you can create something out of nothing as an instrument. I found it also just very satisfying that they have these speakers on here and kind of giving you just the option of playing music directly off the speaker, so you don't have to grab headphones, you don't have to put something in your jack or put something in the USB-C. You can just turn this piece of equipment on and you can just start playing with it with the speaker. So what I'm going to do right now, I'm going to take this Orba, I'm going to connect it through the 1/8 headphone jack and turn it on, kind of play with it, go over some significant features on this particular device. So of course, from turning it on, one thing I do find very interesting in the way that they designed this is the use of these LED lights that are on the ends. This denotes and does a lot for a device that doesn't have a screen on its own, which I think is brilliant. Of course, you can see right here on the top where the plates are segmented or separated. You have, right here in the middle, that little A right there, that is your primary button. But also you have the numbers 1 through 8 on here, and then written drum, bass, chord, lead, a play pause symbol, record, BPM, and then OCT for octave. Now, as you notice right here, that light is lit up where the drum is. And as you cycle through each of these different instruments, I'll say, right here, the first 4 segments are instruments, and then the last 4 segments over here are different functions, different things that you can do on your Orba 2. So you have one of 2 ways of cycling through the different types of instruments, and it's only 4 different types that you can hold on here at one time. Using that A button, you press the A button, and you'll see right here as it all lights up and it'll cycle through, it goes down to the second one. So drum, bass, chords, and lead. You see right there the LED lights up every time you press that button, and then it cycles right back between the 4 different ones. Another way to get to the other instrument is holding down that A to where everything is lit up and you see all of the little LEDs are lit up. And then if you press the button to the instrument you want, you see that one lights up just a little bit more than the other LEDs. When you let it go, you see it's lit up and you're right there on that instrument. So you have these different instruments. You can have different types of instruments put in there. You do have to use the application, whether you connect it via your phone, your smartphone, or your mobile device, or using it with a direct USB-C connection into your computer. Essentially, if you're using your phone, I believe you can use a USB-C to connect it. I haven't tried that out, but typically what I do is I do it via Bluetooth. You can do that as well, Bluetooth as well as USB-C with your computer. It's going to show the current instrument that you're on, and the current kit that you have in that particular instrument type. One thing that's kind of cool on the screen, you'll see it actually react to anything that you do. So as I hit different parts on this, it'll show it. In addition to that, you know, just based on how much of your finger is on a particular thing or how hard you hit it will denote the size that you see visually represented here. But if I cycle through all the instruments, it'll show the different kits that I have loaded on there, and it'll show a representation on them. One thing to kind of note about this is that even though this doesn't have physical buttons that you can feel, when you press something on here, there is what they call a haptic response to it, where the device will vibrate based on you touching that device. That's a lot of people use that on their phones when they're typing. It kind of gives them feedback when they're pressing something. I'll say that even though this doesn't have a button, and I do love to push buttons, the haptic response that I get from touching it is still very satisfying, just as satisfying as if this were buttons, separate buttons. And I think that kind of works out because, you know, outside of just pushing individual buttons, just being able to do something like this and just to play around with it, it's just a very free-flowing type of instrument. If you want to change the type of bass instrument that you want, you just go down to the app and go from play to presets. And it has a lot of these kind of preloaded instruments that you can scroll through. You just press the button on that particular one and send to Orba, hit send to Orba in order to send it to your device. I will say that this does have a pretty decent amount, a decent selection of different types of instruments, though personally some of them seem a little stockish to me. There are a few in here that I think are really good and fit my particular taste when it comes to instruments. And really just real quick, you know, just going into the other different functions here. We'll start here with the octave portion. So if I'm going to, let's go to my chord. You can do different octaves on here as well. You just press that middle button, which is kind of the gateway to different functions on the Orba 2. So I'm going to push that A button and then at the same time hit the octave pad right here. When you hit the octave pad, you see that singular thing come up. You want to keep that button held down. When you press down on the octave pad, and you can rotate it back and forth as to which octave you want to go up or down for. So I'm going to go, I'll start here, hit octave, go up 2, and go down 2. In addition to that, every time you hit octave, that resets it to the middle. Now, when it comes to the BPM portion, of course, holding down that A, and all you have to do is if you tap the BPM, and you see right here where the drum portion is located, the tap is going to essentially be what the BPMs end up being. So there's no necessarily a counter for that, but based on the rate by which you tap it, that is going to determine what your BPMs is going to be for your Orba 2. In addition to the BPMs, holding down that button, so if I hold A and then I press this button, you'll see it cycle through. What that's going to do is going to turn off the metronome when you're recording. Now, getting back into kind of the step sequencer, I'm going to turn the metronome back on first. And then all you need to do, you press down the A button and then you hit the record button, let go, and you'll hear the metronome as it begins to go. Now, the interesting thing about this is that the metronome waits for you to start before it begins the actual sequence for using your device. So and even though you let it go a little bit more, since I'm not pressing it or anything, it's already stopped at the last place I stopped unless I start again. But if I hit the button and then hit record again, it's going to start exactly where I started the first things that I start, and then it starts right where I stop playing keys. And of course, you hear it still going. You still hear that metronome going, and this record is still recording, which means I am still able to record over it. So I could just add to it. So you hit that record again, it's going to continue to play, but it's no longer recording. This kind of gives you the ability to kind of test something out. So let's say I want to get into the chord. I want to add a chord to it. Once I hit there, it starts recording again. And when you change the instrument, you can see it kind of lags in the actual response of the instruments. It's probably due to just kind of a shorter, smaller CPU. Let's do it without recording. Let's just practice. Let's just do it. And then of course, that A and pad 5 will start it and stop it. So that was just a quick overview of the Orba 2. This is going to be something that I'm going to start integrating specifically with my workflow with the SP44 Mark II. I am looking at this as a separate instrument that I'm going to use for input purposes. In addition to that, I'm going to start integrating it as well with my Logic Pro. But I'd be curious to know what you guys think. Do any of you have an Orba 2? Have you ever used this or been curious about it? If you have an Orba 2 yourself, how do you use it? Do you use it as a standalone instrument? Is it a MIDI controller? Do you have an SP44 Mark II? What other pieces of gear that you use and integrate with your Orba 2? As always, I thank you for the view. I thank you for the listen. And until next time, peace.